I think our main political concerns was the fact that morality was being dominated by the church and religion. And what was so blatantly obvious is that the rules of religion and these God-given rules, which were in fact a justification for patriarchy, were so inequitable, were so inhumane. And so I think one of my main concerns was the idea that we were going to liberate ourselves from this God morality and try to establish a humane secular language and a humane secular authority. And of course, at that time, if you from even as a not a very well-informed teenager, the human rights narrative, the creation of international human rights and civil liberties was very much coming into my consciousness as as an upper class child. Reacting against the hypocrisy of the marriage of my parents and reacting against the prison that I saw my mother and my grandmother in. So this human rights narrative and the unification of Europe and the Brand Report were, of how to resolve war and how multicultural international people could live more humanely together was absolutely key to what I thought the hippie generation of peace and love was actually going to be about. Looking back on it, that period was an era of male liberation. Men wanted to be liberated from their marriages and to have as much sex as possible, but they weren't going to liberate women as well. And what was so terrifying was that our colleagues, who we were working alongside equally, although they were going to liberate themselves, the working class man was going to liberate himself from the oppression of the ruling class, but they wanted all the privileges and the entitlements of their white male upper class rulers. And what was a shock to women in the 60s was that our male colleagues was just as misogynistic as, in fact, any patriarchy of the past. And I think one of the most significant moments for women in that era was when we asked, what is our role in the liberation movement? And Stokely Carmichael announced to the world that the woman's role was to be horizontal. And then Germaine Greer came out with her magnificent book, Female Eunuch, and she listed the 170 varieties of derogatory term for what women were if they were not ladies, not virgins. We were whores, slags, boilers, loose, all the pejorative terms. And there was only one term for the liberated male, which was stud. The state of feminism today, to me, is both heartbreaking and joyful. Because in the 60s, we didn't have the language, we didn't have the critical mass in which to combat misogyny and sexism. Today, I see women, a critical mass of women, armed up with the language, being able to combat misogyny and sexism. But because, on the whole, even this last 50 years, not enough men have joined with women in this in this project to end misogyny and sexism. Women today are, albeit in the technology is different, are experiencing the same stuff and the same idiocy and the same hatred that I was experiencing in the 60s. It's maintaining your hope. And that is difficult, but I hope that the example of what we achieved in the 60s to radically change society, to make society 100% more benevolent and progressive today than it was 50 years ago, is that it can be done. Hang in there, demonstrate, continue, be hopeful.